you guys and gals would be interested in it. Maybe you know about it, I don't know. But this, if you've ever tried to find the center of a dowel or a round object, I've always had trouble with that. It's always given me a headache. I can come close, but never exact. This little thing is made by Veritas, and what you do is you put your dowel or your round object in the corner here, and there's a blade here. It's not real sharp, but it's pointed. Put it up against the corner, and you tap it several times. Tap it, tap it, tap it, and on the bottom, you'll see that the lines meet in the exact center. And according to the instructions, or to the specs, it's good to 1/12 of a degree. So if you're looking for something to find the center of a dowel or a tenon, this will do it.
What's it called?
It's called a center marker, and it's Veritas, V-E-R-I-T-A-S. It's made in Canada. And I looked up the price, it's about 25 bucks. So.
Great tool though.
So a lot of people do threading. I think they thread with a thread chaser. Now this is, what I'm using is not thread chasing. What I'm using is just a tap and die set, and it's made for wood. If you're a metal worker, you use a tap and die. But a thread chaser, I believe a thread chaser, if I'm not mistaken, you can make threads pretty much of any size on any kind of a box or container that you want. This is a fixed thread size, and that's what I'm using. That slides a lot quicker than mine does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the headstock. And I've got this fixed in the jaws of the chuck, I think. I can start the threading process. Now, they call for a lubricant. They call for a lubricant of either tung oil or mineral oil. And tung oil and mineral oil has an odor to it, and I think it's flammable, so I didn't bring it here tonight. But I've got some mineral oil that I'm going to use instead. I'm just going to dip this in here and give it some kind of a lubrication.
So obviously you've already pre-drilled, eh, Don?
I did. I pre-drilled this. That's a good point, Dave. This the hole needs to be. This is for an 1¼ inch hole. I had to drill the hole to 1 1/8 inches. So you want at least an 1/8 of an inch of threads.
So you pre-soak the wood as well, because I've done some of those, and
You
they
do.
suggest you do the wood.
You need to pre-soak the wood also.
Just in water?
No,
No,
you
linseed oil.
pre-soak it in oil, and again, tung oil or linseed oil, but I'm using mineral oil.
So like a whole bucket of it, you submerge the whole piece? Or?
Well, I don't know if I'd want to submerge the whole piece, but at least the part where you're threading.
And how long do you have to do that?
I would recommend overnight to get it. The idea is to soften up the threads, or to soften up the wood fibers to prevent it from tearing out. So I'm going to get some tear out, but this will give you the idea. So as I thread this, I want to make sure that all this is good and straight. As I thread it, I'm going to advance the tailstock as I go.
So you're actually cutting the threads right now?
I'm actually
by
cutting the
holding them?
threads now, yes. So as I cut the threads, I'm advancing the tailstock to make sure that they're straight. Now it's going to start getting tight, so I'm going to have to clean out the gullets of the thread. That's what a pocket knife is for. And I should probably put more lubricant on here, but for the purpose of demonstration, it doesn't really matter.
Don,
Yes.
what's the purpose of having the tailstock up there?
Well, make sure that the threads are straight as you go in, because you can put this. I've tried putting this in a vise and threading it, you know, by hand, but invariably they come out a little bit crooked. So the tailstock makes sure that everything is straight.
So you're not putting a lot of pressure on the tailstock?
I'm not putting hardly any pressure on it. I'm just using it as a guide. Okay, so I needed about an inch of threads here. So in order to get an inch of threads, I need about a 2-inch hole, because the threads, the tap is about 2 inches long.
When you drill the hole, Dawn, do you do that on a drill press, or do you drill those on the lathe?
I do that right on the lathe. I drilled it on the lathe. I drilled the 1 1/8 hole first, and then I follow through with in this case for these pepper grinders, pepper grinders require a 1 inch and 1/16 of an inch hole. So I started out with 1 1/8 for my threads, and then I continue through with 1 inch and 1/16. And I don't typically go all the way through with 1 inch and 1/16. I'll flip it around and meet somewhere in the middle. So that's pretty much it, and it's pretty messy. It's not a real clean thread.
You cut the threads like you're doing before you turn the mill, or do you do that as a part of the end of the project?
I'm sorry, say that again?
When do you cut the threads when you're actually building the pepper mill?
Okay, so actually I cut the threads, first of all, I turn it round. I turn the blank round, and then I drill the hole, and then I cut the threads.
And then you turn the mill afterwards?
And then I turn the mill afterwards, and I'll show you what I do after that. So the threads are cut here now. They're not very pretty, but they're in there. I found that cherry seems to work pretty well. This is cherry, but it's not. It didn't cut very well. But I'll pass it around. You can see what it looks like.
Did you say where did you get the tap?
The tap, these particular taps I got from Woodcraft. It's the Wood River. They come in, I think they start out at 1/2 inch and go all the way up to 1 1/2 inch in 1/4 inch increments. So now, I'm going to put another chuck on here so I don't have to change jaws.
I take it that's the club's new stronghold?
It's the brand new Stronghold chuck.
You're the first one to use
I'm the
it.
first one to use it.
How's it work?
It works really well.
Good deal.
got my larger lathe, the headstock on my older lathe was 1 inch. So I had to buy, when I got the newer lathe, I had to buy an adapter. This is an adapter that'll fit from 1.25 inches down to 1 inch. So what I cut before was the female threads. I'm going to create a tenon and cut the male threads.
You make the nut. Fix there.
Some of you guys may recognize these toner bars for this lathe, this chuck. I don't want this piece of wood to bottom out on my chuck, so I'm going to back it out just a little. I'm going to cut a tenon that's about 2 inches long. I want my tenon to be 1.25 inches in diameter. So I've got a pair of vernier calipers here, and I'm going to set it to 1.25 inches. I'm going to use a parting tool. This is a 1/4 inch parting tool, and I'm going to use the Easy Wood rougher, and this has a square tip on it. I find this works really well for doing tenons. It gives you a nice square shoulder.
What speed you run?
Oh, I'll run it probably around 1,000. First thing I got to do is set the tool rest back down. I've got a clamp on my tool rest so it's always in the right spot. Now, start with a parting tool. I start with the handle down and then move the handle up a little bit as I go to cut the tenon. So now I've got,
Would you mind turning your rim around or something? It's interfering with the picture.
sorry,
There you go. Can you do a little rack for it?
I don't even know how to spell rap, that's what it's doing. I'm too old for that. Okay, so with the parting tool now, I've got this down to 1.25 inches. Yeah, 1.25 inches on here. So now it's just a matter of removing what's in between. And I'll do that with the Easy Wood tool. I had a friend of mine who I was teaching how to turn, and he would always take his finger and move the shavings, clear the shavings off of this. These are carbide tips and they're really sharp. He found out real quick not to do that. I'm going to put a little chamfer on it so that I can start the thread. And let's see how far away we are. Okay. We're in pretty good shape. I'm going to just dip this in the mineral oil a little bit to soften it up. This I would normally let sit for quite a while. This is the die that I'm going to use, and this is 1.25 inches. That's the size that I pick. These dies come in different sizes. I think they start out at maybe 1/2 inch and go all the way up to 1.5 inches. And there's a little cutter in here. It's a little V-shaped steel cutter. I've had one of them. They're very sharp and they're very brittle. I've had one of them chip away on chip already, so you got to be careful with it. So it's just a matter of locking the headstock. And cutting the threads.
So is that thing 2 pieces or?
It's one piece, but this is kind of a guide. This section here kind of guides the.
So when you buy with the handles and everything.
You buy it with the handle and everything, and this was a kit. This and the tap came in one kit. So again, if I'm going to cut 1 inch of threads, I need about a 2 inch tenon in order to cut 1 because you lose an inch with this piece here that's on the die.
Shortcut's a lot easier than tapping the hole, doesn't it?
Yeah, this does. This cuts really easy. And a lot of time, most of the time, the threads come out pretty well.
You didn't put it in the middle of
I just dipped it in there. I didn't soak it for very long.
What if you need those threads to go all the way to the,
I'm sorry?
what if you need those threads to go all the way?
Um,
Is it not possible? Can you turn it around the other direction and do it? And it only cuts one direction. Right?
yeah, you probably could, but I don't know if the threads would meet correctly in the middle. Yeah.
I think if you wanted an all thread piece, you would make that piece longer
Make it longer. Yeah.
But if you went all the way to that
and
seat,
then cut it off.
could you take the guide off and then run it out on there again?
I haven't tried it, but I think you probably could.
Okay.
I think you probably could. Yeah. Especially once you get them started.
Well, this seems screwed together, Don.
Where's the?
Right there.
Let me see it here. Let's see if it screws together.
All right. Let's give him a round.
Hey, Don, you had, your pepper, salt and pepper mill that you had been on the display there. You run up threads up to the shoulder on that.
Okay, so I'll explain to you how I did that.
Oh, okay.
What I did in this case was I cut another tenon on this, and I cut the tenon to about 1 inch. And then so I cut the tenon to about 1 inch. That's just a number that I picked. I take a block, drill a 1 inch hole in it with a Forstner bit. Cut this to 1 inch, cut this piece off, take the tenon and glue it into here, and I've got a piece that looks like this. Okay. And then what I do is this is a jig I made, and I threaded this in to fit on my headstock. This is a 1 inch thread. It's a 1 inch by 8. This fits right on the headstock of my adapter because I've got a 1 inch adapter. I thread this on the headstock, and then I take this and I thread this in here, and now I can turn this. And it may look something like this when I'm done. You're on.
Now, on the pepper grinder mill you have right there, it's already fluted.
Yeah.
I mean, it almost looks like you got a nut shape.
Well,
Is that,
What I did was I've got a belt and disc sander. I set the bevel to 45 degrees
just,
and just run the edges up against the disc sander, and until I just
created the nut look, huh?
yeah, I created a 8-sided nut. Now, I'll show you how I make the flutes. Are there any other questions? I think I've covered threading pretty much. So I put my adapter on the headstock.
Seems like it'd be pretty handy to have a, whatever, a tap or whatever, this same as your spindle size, you know?
You can get the taps 1.25 or an inch. When I bought the inch adapter, I didn't have my big lathe. So now I can put my pepper grinder on here, like so.
John, once you've threaded it like that and you put the two pieces together, you can no longer turn that, can you, on the lathe? My guess is it would tighten the threads up too tight.
Well,
You know,
it's happened where it's really tight, but you can still get it loose.
okay. Have you done that, turned it once you've done,
This is the way I turn it now.
oh, you do turn it?
I do.
Okay.
This is the way I turn it. So this is the bottom of the pepper grinder. This requires inch and a half tenon. So what I do is I'll turn an 1.5 inch tenon on this, put it together, run the tailstock up, and I'll finish turning my grinder to shape, whatever shape I decide to turn. And then the mechanism for the pepper grinders goes in the bottom here. So that's the last thing you do, and then you usually epoxy them in there. So I'll show you how I do the fluting. Make sure this is good and tight. I created a fluting jig. I looked online for fluting jigs, and they were all complicated and expensive. And again, like I said, that's what keeps me awake at night. I'm thinking about how to do this cheaper and accomplish my goal. So I came up with my version of a fluting jig, and it's just a piece of press board, and I've got a 1-inch steel rod here that I got from a good friend of mine.
See it referenced by chance?
So what I do is I put this in place of the tool rest. I line it up over top of my grinder, center it, and then I use the indexing here on the lathe. I don't see the indexing pin here, but there's 12 different indexes here. So that means that every index is 30 degrees. I've got a router just set aside for this. I won't plug this in, it's noisy, it makes a lot of noise. I've got a collar, it's a 1/2 inch collar that fits into the router. These collars are readily available, they come in kits. And it's a round nose bit. And it just so happens that this groove that I cut is a 1/2 inch just to fit the collar. So now what I do, set this in here and turn it on and move it backwards and forth. Cut a flute, advance it another 30 degrees, cut another flute, another 30 degrees, and so forth and so on. So I end up with about 12 different flutes.
Is that a plunge router?
This is not a plunge router, but you can use a plunge router. So what I do,
You tip it?
I tip it,
Okay.
I set it up so that it plunges in about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch, not much. I plunge it in, I route it, and then I gently pull it out. Because if you stop it in the middle, you're going to get a little divot from the bit.
So when you're doing it, do you take a platform or your
I take the,
jig
I
all the way
take,
down to the?
yeah, I do take the platform all the way down.
Okay.
It will go all the way down. Just like that. And now I've got maybe 1/8 of an inch here that I can run.
And you can probably adjust the depth on the router as well.
I can adjust the depth on the router too, as well.
So you cut your slot as long as you want your flute in the top of that.
That's
table.
exactly what I do. I cut the slot as long as I want the flute. So this slot is cut
So it
specifically
fits for what you're doing.
for what I'm doing. Yeah, and I made the jig kind of universal so that if I want to cut different slots, I can add another piece of press board or particle board, whatever you're using, mount it on here and do the same thing.
But
And I-
you could put stops, or you could use just a long slot and put stops,
You can,
right?
and I've done that before, but this is
It's nice to use that key.
dummy proof. That's what I need. I think I covered everything, but these are some of the other jigs that I've made. I use these also for the pepper grinders because once everything is turned and the end is turned, sometimes you need to do them separate. There's no threads on the other one, so I just cut a tenon on these. And when I want to turn this or finish it, I can mount this in here. And it's a press fit. In fact, in this case, it's not going to fit, but it's pretty close. And then I can turn it and sand it and flip it around. So I've got different size tenons here to fit the different holes in each side. So
That matches the pepper mechanism?
this matches my pepper mechanism, but whatever you're doing, you could use it to match whatever you're doing. But the fact that you can make a thread for to fit your headstock is a big plus. Then you can put whatever you want on there and cut a tenon to fit whatever you're making at the time.
So back up a step, maybe you explained it, and I just missed it, but your fluting jig,
Yes.
do you have a secret for making sure it's lined up so you're getting straight flutes down the piece?
I can show you some pepper grinders that aren't lined up exactly.
Well, and I want to know how you solved that problem.
Well, so what I did, before I cut the slot, I drew a straight line across my jig here. And I lined that straight line up. Well, what I'll do sometimes is before I start cutting the flutes, I'll draw a line across my grinder blank here. And I'll line the center of this line up with the center of the line that's on the blank, just by looking through the holes and lining it up. The first time I didn't do that, and I've got kind of catty-cornered flutes. But I'm going to say that was done on purpose. That to add a little clash to the grinders. You know.
Now, there's 3 different holes on that index, and you can do, like right here,
Oh, and this
Can't you do different more than
You
3?
can do, this index at the top is for 12, and you can go in between and add and subtract to it by these other 3 holes that are here.
It's almost like
It's
36.
You can, if you really want to add to it. The small piece you got, maybe you want,
I did 12,
is it just 12?
but it's small. But if you have a big one, then maybe it's spread out.
Right. Any questions at all on what I've gone through?
Good job.
Great job, Scott.